Alô Brasil! Hello world! Jai Mataji! Welcome to our Virata podcast. My name is David Jesus Vignoli and I'm here with Aida Diaz. Hi Aida!
Hi, Jai Mataji.
And we are going to do this interview with Uncle Edward. Hey, hi Uncle Edward. How are you doing?
Hello. Pretty good. Enjoying life as a
Are you
yogi, of course.
are you prepared now to tell your story?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. It might be too much.
So we are here with Uncle Edward and we are trying to create like his life story so far and his amazing journey in Sahaj Yoga and stories with Mataji. So, shall we start?
Jawohl.
So Uncle Edward is in Vienna, and I lived also. I was lucky enough also to live in Vienna, so we can share some few words here and there in German.
In German, yeah. Secret messages.
Secret passage. Okay, so let's go. Let's start from the beginning. So, from your
Beginning.
childhood in Canada, how was
It,
it?
it was terrible. No, actually, I have this theory that because they say difficult things you go through is because of your karma. But I don't think it's, or negativity, but I don't think those are the main factors for a Saj Yogi, the things that he's gone through to get to where he is or she is, because I think the main thing is that in this life we have to get it, like the end of Kali Yuga and the beginning of Sattva Yuga is not waiting for us. And if we're been a bit slow in our past lives and we're not, we need a little push. The thing that God gave us complete freedom, which means our ego can do whatever it wants. But the only thing I think, in a way, that God can interfere or help us to stay balanced is to give us some super ego, basically to, bring us down to earth. And so when I look back at my life, it's like some of the worst things possible happened to me,
Oh
and
my
not only
God.
like once, but then they became compounded later on, and even more complicated, like a maze, like a maze inside. And then I thought, you know, I think it really has to do with just, I really told God between lives, I said, no, I have to get it this time. And okay, you're willing to do anything? Yes, of course. And if I'd known what was coming, I, maybe thought twice. But yeah, when I look back, because now I'm 65, and so I can see, and I'm a writer also, so I've written everything down. And Brigitte and I are like sort of like detectives. We're always trying to figure out everything. Every day we're talking about the vibrations, how something changed, and this and that. So literally, I feel I could have very comfortably just flown off on my ego in this life, and I've got a lot of talents. I could have done things, but I was so crippled inside. I really didn't. I couldn't really stick to anything except, as my wife pointed out recently, uh, every day for, well, I've been in Saj Yoga for 41 years. Plus, I was doing a false meditation 8 years before that. So from the age of 16, I literally, even if it wasn't working, the meditation is supposed to be thoughtless awareness. Every day I sat down again and again and again for, decades and kept trying. So in a way, I did actually practice something my whole life, one specific thing to get good at. And yeah, and here we are.
So let's start just a little bit. Is there any experience that you had, like in your childhood, like
Yeah, I think, well, you know what, in the beginning, in the 50s, there was all this alcoholism and stuff. So it was completely chaotic, and my father left. But somehow something happened, and sort of I missed my initial, what would you call the initial training as a child, as a little boy, how to engage with the world and stuff. So I sort of missed the first 8 years was just a mess. But then suddenly my parents independently stopped drinking, and my dad came back, and then he started a real estate business, and we became rich. And
Wow.
in this particular picture, where I'm on a mountain overlooking the islands on the west coast of Canada, we had a cottage on an island, and this was 1970, so I just turned 12, and I was like super. I mean, it's from eight. Actually, in 8 years old, I had an experience on the beach because suddenly we were all one family again, and the parents weren't drunk, and we all went to a cottage on a different beach. And I got up early in the morning and I went alone out on the low tide, and I had this amazing. I don't know, something. I think sometimes my Kundalini used to come up to my heart or something. Oh my gosh, I wanted to hug all the all the birds there, and uh, and so yeah, 4 years later, we had this cottage, and again, like I went up on this hill, and oh my god, you know, I literally felt this breathtaking feeling. I'm sure my Kundalini came up a bit, and so Shimadaji gave me this period between 8 and 14 where I really we were living so beautifully, and we had super school and all these friends and forests and you know the perfect setting. And then everything crashed again with 14 because my dad started drinking again and left, and I started doing drugs and transcendental meditation. But so there was this period in between which was perfect. So in a way, it was again like my story. It was like, and then very bad things came again later. And so I had really the sort of on the outside, it was everything was really, really nice. And inside, it was, you know, basically all twisted. And I think that took me like the first few years, 4 years or so in Sahaj Yoga to, I mean, you know, like you're supposed to remember your first experience of realization and remember that joy. But my first experience when I went to there was like 5 yogis there in Canada, and some friend that I used to do drugs with took me there, and I just felt my whole back was paining, and I had the Ekadesha Rudras were squeezing, and so in the beginning I was basically really caught up, but actually within 2 weeks I completely all this habit of drugs and everything I had for 10 years from the age of 14 just suddenly disappeared. And you know, I just had a little black and white paper photo of Shimataji that I put out for 20 minutes. I look at my watch in the morning and evening, then I put it back in the drawer. But just doing that within 2 weeks, I just like woke up, and it was like I'd been underwater all the time, and I just left. I left this crazy scene that I was in, and again went to this beautiful west coast. I stayed on an island for a month, and so but the healing process, and even now recently within the last few years, I think Shimadaji really was very gentle. Like my first India tour, I didn't get sick. I was, I mean, really possessed.
Uncle Edward, just before you go to the India tour, just before, because you were going to fast, but so before you go to the India tour, so you are always a seeker as
Well,
well.
I didn't know anything about seeking or anything until my dad, my drunken dad, took me to transcendental meditation to get initiated when I was 16. And then I heard, oh my God, the new age is coming, and you just have to meditate. And of course, it was you know, a bunch of rubbish what they were telling. But and then I was running around telling everybody. I thought, oh my God, in 1973 when I went to TM, if I had somehow found Sahaj Yoga, you know, when I was 16, I would have been running around giving realization to all my friends. And instead, I was stuck in this mess. So I was 24 when I came to Sahaj Yoga. So
And so your friend, no, you're saying that one of your friends now brought you
yeah,
to
I
the
think
program.
I mean everything was like I really have the feeling it was like, you know, just like a play. I don't know, like the script was all set up, and just a year before I got realization, I had spotted this house that was all alone between the farmlands, and I said someday I'm going to live in that place. And basically, I wanted to have it so I could have big parties there. But so I was actually living in this little house on my own, and near the big neighborhood where I grew up. And then that's where, yeah, this friend of mine, that party friend, he got his realization from these first four yogis who had just got their realization, went to India immediately. One of them got married, it was Richard Payment. and they made an ashram. Like this is all within 5 months. And they had an ashram running in Vancouver, and then they went and did in the suburbs in a little tiny library. They did a program. I don't know why. I think Mark Taylor's parents lived out there or something. And this friend of mine went to it, and he lay awake all night feeling his kundalini, and he didn't know who to tell. So he thought of me, and he came and tried to tell me, and then a few days later he picked me up and took me to the ashram. So literally, I was like picked out of just complete blackness and no Sahaja yoga or anything around, and just delivered there. And in the beginning, yeah, after a few months, I moved into the ashram, and then all the yogis, all 5 yogis, went to India. So me and my friend were just stuck there, and so that sort of takes us up to the India.
One question in terms of recognition of Shri Mataji. So when you went to India, so had you already recognized Shri Mataji, or it's something that happened when you met her?
Yeah, I mean, these 8 or 10 years that I was seeking, I would just basically, like all the seekers, just read everything, and I try to find common denominators and think, this must be true because this book and this book say the same thing. So you can imagine after 10 years of, LSD and cocaine and things, and the TM on top of that, when I went to get that realization that evening at the ashram, and I just had this pain, and Patrick Redigan was very kind to sort of talk to me and explain things. I heard for the first time after 8 years that TM was really evil. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I had no idea. So I went home, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the I Ching. It's a Chinese oracle.
No.
Shri Mataji,
I Ching. Yeah, I Ching. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Shri Mataji even mentioned it once, I think. It has very good vibrations, and you can actually determine specific things by asking, tossing coins. So somehow, I guess Shri Mataji knew I was so wishy-washy, I would have no idea. So just a few months before, my mom gave me as a Christmas present an I Ching, and I had been using it for a few weeks. So I knew it worked. It was very effective. So the first thing I did when I got home to my little shack, this little house I was renting, is I took out the I Ching and I asked, so who's Shri Mataji? I got the highest oracle, like saying this is like the new age and the highest, goddess. And so that's why the next morning, instead of doing my TM, I put Shri Mataji's picture there and continued doing that. And, literally got healed. But I remember after a couple of months, because I'd go to the ashram here and there and, learn more. I sort of got I think somebody told me, I guess it was Felicity, that, she was also Mother Mary. So that was something I could sort of identify with. It was like, oh, wow. I think I went and told my mom, I was like, Shri Mataji was Mother Mary. He had no idea what I was talking about, but that was something I could identify with. And then I remember after a few months, because when I heard about the India tours, I thought, I had heard about marriages also, and I thought, oh, wow, I wonder if I should get married. And then I asked I Ching about that also, and it said, all the princes gather with the queen or something. It was referring basically to the India tour. And I mean, that was anyway too early for me. But a year later, I remember I sent a letter to Shri Mataji. We could all send letters to Guru Puja in England. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking Shri Mataji, I said, maybe I could get married, and I was thinking Indian people are so spiritual. Maybe I think I even wrote maybe an Indian woman, like trying to figure out like how does this work,
And then you finally went to India. I mean, before you got married, you went first to India, no? Your first probably encounter with Shri Mataji, right?
Yeah, that was like everybody left except me and my friend, and then I decided if I could sell my truck, I would go on the second tour. And like 4 days before the second tour, somebody came and bought my truck, and my mom lent me some money, and I was off traveling halfway around the world with a big suitcase. I think I had 3 stops on the way, like New York, London, and I arrived at 2 a.m. in Bombay, completely alone, and the people who had mixed up my time. So I was There's nobody there. I think I had a phone number actually. So one really nice policeman. It was so hot, so humid. I was dragging the suitcase around, and this very kind policeman got the number. He called, woke up some yogi. I think there was like only 100 yogis in Bombay at the time. Woke up somebody and found the address where everybody was staying, and got me on a taxi. And I sort of went up into it's called a marriage hall, and I think on one whole floor all the men were sleeping, on another floor all the women.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really weird story because, I mean, again, I don't know why these weird things happen to me, but I finally have, after millions of years of evolving, I had a chance to meet Adi Shakti, and so I woke up in the morning, all these people, and I think they were lining up for breakfast or something. And then I was kneeling on my sleeping bag in the far corner. I think I must have fallen into sort of a coma or something. I don't know. But kneeling on my sleeping bag, and then suddenly I hear the leader call my name from all the way at the other end of the hall. I stand up and look, all the yogis in the hall are facing me. And I was trying to, and then I turned and saw somebody go into a room that was right beside me, a door. So apparently Mataji had entered and gone through the whole hall, passed me while I was sitting on my sleeping bag, and went past me into this room. So, I mean, it was not a very auspicious beginning, but that evening there was one marriage because somebody had to go home, and that was Malcolm and Meenakshi, Abdu's sister, which I just found out recently because I read the memory books. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know whose wedding that was. So I was sitting in the audience on a chair near the back, and something was happening on the stage, and the Bombay Collective was entertaining with children, and then Mataji made this marriage. And sitting at the back row, I was sitting beside an Indian man who I was talking to before. And then at some point he says, yeah, it would be nice to come and visit you in Canada. He said, by the way, I am Sri Mataji's brother. And I was,
It's Baba Mama then.
I think it was the lawyer or the judge. But all these things were like completely, I had no idea. I had been, I think, 9 months in Sahaj Yoga, and I had really no idea what was going on. And,
Uncle Edward, just a second. I think there is a problem a little bit with your microphone. I can hear some noise. So perhaps if you, I don't know, you can just unplug the microphone and try the microphone of the laptop, because there's some noise in the background.
It is the laptop microphone.
Oh, really? Okay. So I think
what kind of noise? You mean like a fuzzy noise?
Yeah, some sort of almost like it's difficult to explain, but it's almost like some sort of insect.
Wheezing.
Okay, wait. Is this better?
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah. Sounds better.
Oh, I think I had the input set to the headphones.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's
better?
perfect. So so you're saying that you were saying that like you saw the marriages and kind of you were inspired, but
actually,
let's come back.
It wasn't actually these marriages. These were up in Delhi.
All right. Okay.
She had just the one marriage for Malcolm and Meenakshi because he had to go to work. He had to go back to London.
Oh, I see. Okay. So just come back here to again what you are coming back to. You are actually coming to India, and you saw the marriage, so you were there. And I think this is a moment where you're going to puja, right?
Yeah, Mataji was just arriving. This was like the whole group, and the yogis in Delhi also were very few. I found out later because you hear things on puja talks afterwards. Mataji was saying this and this happened, and you're like you had no idea what was going on. She said, I asked the yogis of Delhi to accommodate the the foreigners. But they had a better idea and rented a big compound, and then it rained so hard that anyway the foreign yogis had to go into the homes of the Indian yogis. So I mean, we went later to this compound anyway, but I was lucky because again I had no idea what was going on. But Sri Mataji's daughter and son-in-law were living in Delhi, and the Canadians, which was like 5 of us, and the Italians, I think it was also 5, including Guido, who got married actually at that time, and a sprinkling of other people stayed in Sadhana's house, and Shrimataji stayed there also. So when we went up to eat dinner in the living room, it was like Shrimataji was sitting there also, and so that was sort of a lucky thing. And then we went back to this compound, and there was like these marriages and things. Actually, when I looked, this marriage video just came out last year onto YouTube, and I looked at the faces. I had no idea. Like in shooting camps many years later, I worked with John Watkinson, and I didn't know he was there, getting married. I never talked to him, and yeah, so many other people. But I don't know if you know. There beside me is Mio. He's a London yogi from Yugoslavia.
Wow.
And he was sort of my sort of buddy, my traveling buddy, because we went up from Bombay to Delhi by train, and he was sitting beside me, and so I sort of had somebody to talk to, even though I was a bit spaced out.
Were you the only Canadian in this tour?
No, we were the whole collective came basically.
Okay, okay.
And there were so many. How many yogis there from Canada this time?
There was only like 7 yogis in Canada, so there was 5 of us there, or 6 of us were there. So most of the collective. And again, in Italy, it was very few yogis in Italy, I think. And most of them came, like 5. No, I think there was more than that in Italy, but yeah, there was only about, I think, 6.
And then you already know what it was, puja, havan, these things.
Yeah, I'd been 8 months, and I'd been living in the ashram for 2 months. And in the old days, we used to do 2.5-hour puja every morning at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning, with the full 1,000 names and all the elements and everything in the ashram. And so when I got there, I mean, basically it was the first time I'd seen Sri Mataji. Plus, I still had this old TM negativity, I think, because I would like shake in her presence. And at the weddings, after the wedding, Sri Mataji was giving presents to each person. And I didn't want to go because I was like so shaky. And then somebody convinced you could just go ahead. And then Sri Mataji somehow gave me the present, which I still have here. And one of the public, that year was in Delhi, these huge pandals with each chakra. So she did, I think, 5 public programs in Delhi, every night, a different location.
Uncle Edward, I think again came the bug that's giving that noise. So the input is the microphone, and the output is the headphones. Because before I had the headphones as the input also. So MacBook Pro microphone built in.
I think probably something with the headphone.
So the input volume is too much. Or do you think it's because of the Bluetooth? Maybe. So if you can disconnect the headset. Should I yeah. Okay, yeah. That's fine. I think it's probably the reason why this noise is so loud. Now it's good. It's good? Yeah, now it's perfect. Yeah. I never trust Bluetooth devices because they're always creating funny things. So let's go back now to India. And this is your first puja, right? With Sri Mataji. Your first puja. I was actually sitting the same distance, but right in front of Sri Mataji. And, I went back after 9 years, and I had a memory that this was a huge hall with hundreds of yogis. And then I went back, it was so small. And, I think we were only like 100 people in there. And at some point, like I was sort of watching, and some ladies were in front of Sri Mataji's feet, and then Sri Mataji had this white thing on, for Sri Shiva. And at that point, at one point, she looked above, like I was sitting against the wall, just here. She looked above my head at the wall, and then she looked in my eyes as Sri Shiva. And I was like, I remember at the time I thought, oh, it was like electricity. And I thought, oh, I think Sri Mataji just worked on me. It's like looking into the eyes of God Almighty.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, it's so close to Sri Mataji. Go on, Aida.
And so it was very quickly, like you switch to Sahaj Yoga and leave your conditionings. Everything happens really fast, right? So in
Yeah.
a few months, you're like the old friends, the old habits. Everything was you
No,
quit.
I still had the old, because on top of everything, I had all these tangles from my childhood, which generally, people, if they have terrible childhoods, they don't notice it when they're young. But it was only in the last 8 years or so that it started coming up, and then I was getting sick and things and having complications. So at that time, I had no idea, and I was very sort of a happy type of optimistic, very naive, optimistic. I would just go, even when the worst things were happening, I was like, oh, but it's, the new age is coming, and everything's going to be great. And so when I went off to India, I just, I knew that's what I had to do, and I just went on my own. And I didn't even have enough money because they said it cost this much, and somebody had to lend me money. I brought exactly that amount. I couldn't take a rickshaw anywhere or anything. So I was like literally just, totally optimistic, like, okay, wow, I'm on India tour.
Amazing. And then in this puja, there was also like you met some other yogis, right?
Well, I missed them actually. I was going to mention that they were on the first tour in Maharashtra. So I didn't meet Gregoire and Engelbert until 1986 then, because I would have met them then, but a lot of Australians and some Europeans left. So I just missed them and met a lot of English, Patricia Proenza. We became friends at that time, Mio, and there were several other people. But the Austrians, I don't think there was any Austrians after, except for Lisa Lotte, who made that Austrian coffee house in Nepal. She actually asked Sri Mataji at that time. She got married to her friend and asked if she should make this coffee house. And so many yogis came to Sahaj Yoga from.
Yeah, Bruno from Brazil, no? Uncle Bruno from Brazil, he also got his self-realization from Lisa Lotte.
Yeah, a lot. There's so many, yeah.
Okay, so now we are going back to Canada, now in 85.
So Sri Mataji actually came that year, 83, to Vancouver.
Okay.
So we hosted her, and I was driving her in a Lincoln Continental, and she did 2 public programs, and she did a television interview. I was driving her to the studio. I remember one time we were a bit late for the interview at the TV. So the world leader was sitting in the back seat said, Edward, when Sri Mataji's in a hurry, it's okay if you speed. So I put the Continental going down the freeway. And then Sri Mataji I was in the studio, and Sri Mataji was then giving realization to these people, the producer and everybody. I was so amazed. Oh my God. And then when she came out, this leader said, Edward was really enjoying this that you were giving, because I was so amazed. Oh my God, look. And a funny thing happened after the public program. I was so involved, because friends of mine had come and all this, and my father had come, and it was a huge program. And afterwards, I was standing out talking to his friends, and she had a little girl, born realized girl, and Sri Mataji stopped and talked to them, and talked to this little girl. And then Sri Mataji went past with the leaders and went to the lift. And somebody was passing me and said, Ed, aren't you actually driving, Sri Mataji? I went, oh my God. And I ran, instead of taking the lift, I ran up 5 flights of stairs and went to the park garage. And it was a one-way street, a city street. And Mataji, by the time I got there, she was already waiting on the sidewalk. So I came out onto the one-way street and just went in reverse up this road and came right up in front of her. And I think she laughed and commented, "Oh, look, he's coming backwards." And then we were driving, and it was almost midnight. And then this is again came up on a Pusha talk later, because we were getting the cassettes coming from London. You know?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck? I never, because they at some point they said, "Ed, can you turn the car around? We have to go to India Town and get some ingredients for food." And what had happened was Mataji kept telling the leaders, "I want to." She invited all the new people for the next day for puja, for Navaratri puja, and cooked for them. So there was 50 new people came to the ashram.
Wow.
And so what had happened was she had kept telling the leaders, "I want to cook, I want to buy the ingredients." And they said, "Sri Mataji, it's too late, it's too late." And then at some point they told me, "Turn the car around." So we went there, and one guy's restaurant was still open, and he called his friend across the street who lived above the shop, and they bought everything that they needed. And Sri Mataji cooked from early in the morning, and all these speakers came and did puja. And so in the puja talk from London, she said, sometimes, the leaders, they just don't, or the Sahaj Yogis just don't listen to me. Like in Vancouver, it happened, and she said, "I felt like taking out a pistol and said, 'Now, come on.'" And I was driving, I didn't, catch any of that. So that had happened in the car. I guess she had felt like taking out this pistol.
So it's amazing, actually, this surrender. Now, there's also immediate response to Sri Mataji's request, right?
Yeah. Sometimes
then-
you want to
Your driver skills improved a lot. So
Huh?
your skills as a driver also improves a lot in Sahaj Yoga.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I think I would have made a really lousy leader, because I wouldn't have been able to catch all these subtle, things. I was just, I don't know. But yeah, that was. So yeah, I had a bit of difficulty because we were a small collective, and I think everybody had done TM, and the leader got really frustrated sometimes, and so I was kicked out twice. And so right after that, it was really bad. The leader said, the reason nobody stuck on from the Sri Mataji's program is because of your bad vibrations, and get out. When you go to work in the morning, never come back and never speak to another Sahaj Yogi.
Oh my God.
So I literally went away and stayed at my mom's, and my mom was just having a nervous breakdown. So like talking about the childhood thing getting compounded and compounded. So again, I was in this terrible situation. But I thought I have to get to vibrations. So where are vibrations? And I thought the ocean has vibrations here. And just by chance on an island, I got a motel room, and I would go 20 minutes by ferry and 20 minutes by bus to the city every day. And I lived on this island for like 5 months and didn't talk to anyone, even at work. I did a Havan and puja every weekend. I shoe beaded. I slept on the hard floor, and thinking I was like the worst person in the world.
Oh my God.
And then I was invited back, and everything was great, and I got this super job. I mean, Sri Mataji really saved me, because I used my last money to get to rent an apartment right beside City Hall, where I applied for this job. My last money, so I had no more money even to eat. And in the end, I was just eating rice and getting skinnier. And after 4 weeks or something, I kept calling them and dropping by and say, "Hey, did you decide yet?" And then I called once from a payphone, and the boss said, this was working for the city of Vienna. She said, "So you want this job?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you got it." And I suddenly had all this money, and I was invited back to live in the ashram and everything. I was like, oh my God. And there was a Ganesha statue I used to pass in a shop every day, when I was working. And first thing I did, I went and paid $80 for this big Ganesha statue, which is still in the Vancouver ashram, and brought it there. I was so happy. And then I made some mistake again. The winter was coming, and again I was sent out. And at the end of that, I went to the leader said, "Maybe you go down to California and see Sri Mataji, and she's coming." And really, I went from zero, just from nothing, being the worst speck of dust, And within a couple of days, we were doing puja in this living room just to inaugurate the new ashram. And I was washing Srimataji's foot. This is the only time I ever did that in 41 years. Literally washing her foot in puja. And here she says, she smiled and said, "Very good." And then she told me, "Just keep smiling like that." And obviously, I'd been miserable for so long. And then in these days, every yogi she'd work on at the end. So when I bowed down, when it was my turn, I thought, well, I'm going to get the whole list, find out all this stuff, and then I can work it out, figure it out. And then she, after a long time, she was working on me, talking to somebody in Marathi. And then she said, "Ha." And then I sat up and she said, the only thing she said was, "Don't feel guilty." And I was like waiting, and don't feel guilty. And then she said, "Everything's going to be fine. Just meditate regularly." And that was sort of my guarantee stamp. It's like whatever happens, and I did go through a lot of crazy things later in Sahaj Yoga also. It was like, just meditate every day, and this is your story. I think you have to just accept it.
Wow. And then in that same year, right, you went to India again.
Yeah, at the end of the year, and the leader also said, "Yeah, you should put your name on the list." That was another funny thing. I think Srimataji in the fall at a puja in New York, and a couple of people went from Vancouver. And when they came back, they said something really interesting happened. Srimataji was looking through all the marriage applications, and in those days you had to list all your weaknesses, all your problems. So I had a big list of things, I think. And the first one apparently Srimataji picked up in New York was mine. And the first thing on my list was that I said I'm always tardy. And Srimataji asked somebody, "What is tardy?" And they said it means he's always late. And then apparently Srimataji said, "Oh, just like me." So this is like two months before I went, or a month before I went to India to get married, and Srimataji took this load off me. The funny thing about this picture, this is me and my wife and sister-in-law. Apparently the leaders, I don't know, Gregor or somebody, matched me with Brigitta's sister. So it wasn't until Vaikarna, on the tour, that Mataji looked and said, "No, this is." Apparently she said, humans make mistakes. You should be, matched with the sister. And Brigitta wasn't expecting any match because she hadn't heard anything. She was on the tour, and then suddenly, she was told, that you're actually matched. And then, so we were in this little village, and Srimataji had a bungalow, and there was all these people milling around in the garden, and somebody called me from the village and said that Gregor wants to talk to you. So I went there. I walked 20 minutes, and then I was there and looking around, and they said, "Oh, Gregor's over there." So I walked up, and he had this girl standing beside him, and Gregor says, "So this is going to be your wife." So and Brigitta and I were both staring at the ground, and I said, "It's okay, you can go now." So, and later on, he saw us in the village, and we still weren't really looking at each other. And he dragged me towards her, and he said, "Now look in each other's eyes." Okay, that's enough. And we still didn't talk for days because at that time they said, "No, you're not allowed to talk to your fiance or something."
Oh, really?
There was all these rules. So, but at some point, after a foot soak in a big river, the whole collective, we got on one of the 6 buses and happened to sit beside each other. And I think in half an hour, I told her my whole past, which you're not supposed to do, actually. But she said she found it very amusing because I told her about, the police used to come and break down my door looking for drugs and things like that.
Oh,
and she really she likes detective stories, So she thought it was really exciting.
So you had first to express your desire to get married. You would tell the leader. How worked actually the marriage at that time?
They just filled out an application and then sent it.
Okay, you had to fill up an application.
And she was actually, she said she was very detached. Like somebody said you should get married. She was like, okay. And then there was a match, and then at some point, yeah, I guess like young people do, she thought, well, actually, she should finish her studies, So she went and told Gregor, well, actually, I don't think, he said, you can't change your mind, all these old rules. He was like the boss of Vienna at that time, founder. And she said, anyway, she didn't care. And then she came, and then we met, and then I was just talking about my boots and my diarrhea, my knobby catch the whole time, and she was completely detached. And but the wonderful thing out there, we were walking together near Brommerpur, in Brommerpur. The amazing thing was at the wedding, I suddenly, for the first time, it was like I'd waited all my life for my best friend, because I had this gap missing in me. I thought someday when I find my female partner, that all my creativity will come out and all this. So I remember at the wedding, we were standing there before the garlanding, this huge crowds and the music and the Shinai and Mataji sitting there. And I just felt like a king, I was like, wow, all this catches and all the things just disappeared. And I just felt totally noble, and like my whole life was fulfilled somehow.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Aida, you have any questions?
No, so you talked about that your creativity. You felt some chakra, something specific that changed a lot after marriage.
Well, it was a bit complicated because she went back to Austria and I went back to Vancouver, where this leader was still picking on me. At some point, the leader said, like, this is something I waited for all my life, and then the leader said, you're so fanatical. You're just going to spoil this whole marriage. You're going to destroy it, And here I was, I couldn't even, there was no internet. I couldn't, I was sending letters to my wife. It takes 2 weeks for a letter to go. And I went into such a black depression. I was just, oh my God, it's all destroyed now because of me.
Oh my God.
So, but then I was such a surprise when I finally arrived in Vienna. In the old days, big group of yogis would meet the new person at the airport, and they had flowers and stuff. And my wife hugged me, and then they took me to someone's house, and there was a big party, and it was like, wow, it was so perfect. Everything in the beginning, it was like a fairy tale. And then the thing is, the first really big European puja, Guru Puja, was coming up in Austria, where buses of people, and you had to pick up all the people at the airport. And that was coming up like within 5 weeks or 4 weeks. So I arrived in this huge collective where nobody was watching me. I was happily married. My wife was making this huge puja crown. And it was like yogis everywhere, and Sri Mataji's here and there and coming again and again. And I made some little Ganesha buttons or something. I found something to do to be useful. And then my wife was with 4 other yoginis in the hotel with Sri Mataji and near the Guru Puja. And so she was like getting full vibration. She'd give me bits of prasad from Sri Mataji and stuff. And then suddenly afterwards, Sri Mataji suddenly took my wife and her sister with her to Germany, And somehow this conditioning came into me, what the leader had been telling me in Vancouver was like, he spoiled it. And somehow I got the idea that Sri Mataji was getting her away from me.
Oh my God.
So I again went into the sort of black depression, and I was sort of trying to help out. And then I sort of saw her from a distance at the Kartikeya Puja in Munich. And all these early things, slowly went away. I remember fanatically, because we used to worry about catches and things all the time also, We used to work on each other every evening. And then I told her something really silly, like, this leader said you're not allowed to do bandan like that or something. And then she just found it so hilarious. She burst out laughing. And then I started laughing also. So usually when our problems got really bad, somehow we'd end up laughing because it was so stupid somehow. But generally in Europe, it was like, right after the Guru Puja, I jumped in a car with 2 guys and drove from Austria to Shooty camps for the first puja there and drove back. Like, we were just like seeing Sri Mataji basically twice a month, and I was in 7th heaven, after this first really hard 4 years, in Canada, where you don't see anybody and you hardly see Sri Mataji at all. So really, that was really like my I don't know, in the hero's journey. I guess that was like my passage through to the other world after the first 4 years of.
If someone doesn't know, just Shooty Camps, it's in Cambridge now in the United Kingdom. Just to give an idea now how much you are driving and how much you are actually going with Sri Mataji. But let's just come back a little bit. The day after you got married, so because you have this picture here.
Yeah. Well, this was in the morning because there was like a whole day event. It started at 6 in the morning on the beach, and then we had to get washed, and then we had to go in front of Sri Mataji and get all our puja utensils. And then the weddings were only in the evening. She did Gauri puja with all the ladies somewhere, and then the men. I think it was already dark. The men were lining up in a. There's a Devi temple there in Ganapati Puli somewhere. So we had to line up and go touch Sri Mataji's feet before we got on our bullock carts and went to the. It wasn't even really a pendle. It was sort of a cloth pendle, and the stage were just some mud bricks, like about this high, and some palm leaves over the top, and I think they put some balloons or something. So that was like completely, rustic, and that was probably the only other occasion I think I actually touched Sri Mataji's foot. And then in the morning, we were just sitting there getting all our things, and I was freezing because at 6 in the morning, Sri Mataji was on the beach, and everybody was there we were sitting on the sand, and they were putting holly on us, and Sri Mataji was talking on a big loudspeaker and joking in Marathi with the Indian ladies, and they were all laughing. And then we had to go in the water, and it was so cold, and I was so skinny, and my navi was so bad. I was just like, I couldn't stop shaking with the water. And then we had to go shower, and the evening or 2 evenings before, I guess we all arrived there. The first time in Ganapati Puli with 6 buses and the clouds of dust in the headlights, and Sri Mataji just stood in the middle of the parking lot, calling the people, telling them where to go with 2 Indian Yuva boys beside her. We were carrying suitcases down it was in these bungalows at the beginning there, and me and 2 other guys came back. And Sri Mataji was still standing there, and she said, Did you find your places yet? And we said, No, Sri Mataji. She said, you can have the bungalow behind mine. So we literally got this blessing of sleeping right behind Sri Mataji's bungalow. And that was sort of the arrival of the whole thing. It was so totally rustic, and it was only my second India tour, my first time in the rustic setting, because I had been in Delhi and Bombay. And but yeah, I must say Brigitte was very patient with me the whole time when I think back. And a couple of people said, wow, one guy said, Sri Mataji must really trust you that she gave you this yogini. And I was like, what? Really? I was like, wow, it must be something special. I don't know.
And then you were saying that you went back to Vancouver, and then later you went to Vienna, and then you start also this. And then when did you decide actually to live in Vienna?
Well, in the India tour, they said, Brigitte should go. I think it was leader wanted to get more yogis to Vancouver. Said, yeah, Brigitte should come. And then I think Warren or somebody checked vibrations. No. When they got home, they checked vibrations again, the leader, the Vancouver leader and her husband, and they found it was better for me to go to Vienna. It's funny because as a child, I studied classical piano, and my whole of my youth, which was wasted, I didn't practice anything. I wanted to become a rock star. So suddenly I found out I was moving to the city of Mozart and music, and I literally rented a piano. I was sitting in the dining room of the ashram for 5 months, and I was taking lessons. And I was practicing every day, even at a recreation center in Vancouver, near where I worked. I would go at lunchtime and practice. I thought, oh my God, I'm moving to the city of music. And nothing ever really came of it, because the funny thing is, when I arrived, Brigitte was with Sri Mataji. At the end of that little story where I felt traumatized, Sri Mataji was in the first Munich ashram with Brigitte and Evelyn with her, attending to her. And the whole time Brigitte said she wanted to ask Sri Mataji, like all this week and a half or something, what I should do, in Vienna. And then at the end, she totally forgot. She was so much in the vibrations. She said they had a wonderful time in that ashram. Munich, like they would just start laughing with Shrimataji. Like Shrimataji's tried to speak German, and Brigitte and Evelyn and Engelbert and somebody were there, and they're Shrimataji also laughing so hard they couldn't stop laughing. Anyway, Shrimataji was leaving to go to the airport, and I was Brigitte. They had just come out of the bedroom upstairs, and I was standing near the top of the stairs. And Shrimataji was just passing me. She stops and looks at me. It literally tells me everything I should do in Vienna.
Wow.
This is after Brigitte had forgotten all about it. And so she told me what kind of work and this and that. And I mean, in a way, another weird thing, a couple of months later, actually, there's 3 of us yogis in Vienna who are older than Sahaj Yoga Austria. I'm one of the 3. My sister-in-law's husband's another one. And my Iraqi sister, who's from Delhi also, is the earliest. She's from 1979. So at that time, she was staying with Shrimataji in London, and she had just made me a Iraqi brother. And then she was just living with Shrimataji in CP and cooking and everything for them. And at some point, she's very innocent, like a child. You know? She suddenly asked Shrimataji, "Why do you send yogis to a country where they can't work?" And then Shrimataji was really, "What? Who's gone somewhere where they can't work?" She said, "Edward, he's gone to Vienna." And Shrimataji was giving bandan that I would give work at work in Vienna. And I mean, I think we had to. I mean, then it came up later that she had a plan for us, but at that time, Brigitte and I were doing like young people doing odd jobs. We were extras in commercials, and we were in a James Bond movie. 3 of us in Vienna and Eric Ferguson in London, by chance, all in the same James Bond movie. And yeah, we were just doing all kinds of work, various work. And as it turned out, it was good in a way because Shrimataji set us on a different path. That was like 1989.
Were you extra of James Bond, or you were actually James Bond?
Well, I was actually the stand-in in case the real James Bond couldn't come. I would. Actually, I was playing the KGB agent. That's me. So I had to fight with James Bond.
Boris Saugstad.
Oh, be careful.
But let's now come back when you started traveling in Europe, and there's a nice picture in Spain.
Yeah, that was. This was actually after we had spent some time in shooting camps helping to renovate, and then I just, people used to jump in cars and drive because there was Shrimataji was always doing something somewhere. And for the months that she was in Europe, she was, every second day doing something. So we could literally, if we wanted to, go and see her a couple of times a month or whatever. And we jumped in a car. It was a really old guy and his wife, old people, and he had a Mercedes, and 3 of us young people jumped in the back seat. And we drove from Vienna to Paris for the public program, and to Madrid for the public program, one of the earliest programs. And then they just created an ashram in Barcelona, so she said we do a puja there. And the funny thing is I was driving with these yogis, and then Brigitte had some ceramic instrument that she had been trying to sell, and she didn't, without telling me, she finally got someone to buy it, and she showed up just before the puja in this Barcelona ashram after I've been traveling, driving thousands of kilometers with these other yogis. So they, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" She said, "I saw the film, I came to the puja." And yeah, we used to live like that all the time. In fact, the first year before we got married, Brigitte and Evelyn's grandmother died, and they got this inheritance, and they were brand new in Sahaj Yoga, so they went to absolutely every event you see on videos of train stations in different countries. Evelyn and Brigitte in the background. We just went to every puja, every single puja every month, and they paid for their India tour.
But it was a great use now of the heritage, I think. Any question, Aida?
No, that's okay. I was just wondering that you came to Austria, and they've always say about the relation of the astras in the destruction of negativities. So it's interesting because you say about many cats and things like that, and perhaps maybe there was a, a purpose that you were there and working in the land that the negatives are destroyed.
Yeah, I think, well, one of the things is, when I went to Washi years later, I found out my left navi was really damaged. Like it was a very damaged chakra. And in fact, all my problems, all my catches in my subtle system were coming from my left navi, which was broken. So yeah, it's amazing. Like I never would have. I didn't even know where Austria was actually. You're marrying in Austria, and I sort of thought of the Alps, and then I think I remembered Sound of Music or something.
That's what I thought.
So yeah, I think I was literally meant to come, and also Brigitte is a very strong yogini. Like she's very, you could say in a way, very tough. She's very kind, like super kind and sensitive, but she's really strong. Like she's made, I don't know how many hundreds of Ganeshas, and she just works like 10 hours a day in her workshop. And she works and works and works. And so, yeah, I had to, and yeah, about Austria as being Astra, it's the highest per capita yogi population in the world because it's only like 8 million. And at some point, I think it was like 1,000 yogis or something. So per capita, it's like the highest population. But I think that's because
Wow.
it's a battlefield. And, Hitler was here with all this real evil. And the Catholic Church was on the left side, this really yucky evil also. And then Freud and everything. So basically, you needed this really jolly collective yogis, who they used to be known on the early India tours. You'd always hear people laughing in the middle of the night. It was always the Austrian. In the buses, people couldn't sleep because they were laughing so much. So I felt really lucky, to be placed in this place. And even now, I remember once having a meditation that I felt, morning meditation, that someday after Kali Yuga, this goddess Guru Lakshmi will rise up in this land. And it'll be just like a little house, cozy house with the mother and all the yogi children. And we'll be living here just enjoying, oh my God, it'll be so safe and cozy and beautiful because it's a very beautiful little. And even Vienna, Sri Mataji loves so much because it's like a jewel box, Like everywhere you look, there's fine details and there's Saraswati. Every time I go to Vienna, I say, Sri Mataji, this is your town. This town belongs to you. So yeah, it was I did feel very lucky coming to Austria.
I think there is also this strong connection with art. No, I think also that's also very strong in Antibrigiti. And if we see, for example, that bowl, no? That was done by Sri Rama Puja, right?
Yeah, she was always painting things or making clay things, and she made a lot of puja crowns. And then this bow, I don't know. Yeah, I guess they got the idea, like somebody should paint the bow. And then we had our little hotel room. I think she painted the bow at home, but this arrow, Sri Mataji is holding the skinny arrow, we had in the hotel room, and all the yogis were told to come by whenever they could, and very tiny, write one of the names of Sri Rama on it. So this arrow has like I think 108 names of Sri Rama written by 108 yogis.
And it's interesting because it's really like the Astra, no? Also the weapon, the divine weapon, created by the Austrians. And here's Antibrigite in Rome ashram, right?
Yeah, I think we went to Easter Puja or something there. This is where actually I think this was when we were approached by a yogi from England who said, we have to get Shruti camps from Mataji's house finished in Cambridge before Guru Puja. And this is at Easter, And he came up to us and said, looking for people, we got to. And then he came up to us again a couple hours later and he said, well, I have to convince you. And we said, no, we're coming. You don't have to tell us a second time. And Brigitte just dropped her studies. We just, without telling anyone at the university, we just went to shooting camp. And we worked for 2 months. She was doing the cornicing, and I was doing the bathroom tiling with John Watkinson, where I learned tiling. Yeah, that was Mataji's bedroom before and after. And yeah, we just, and then some yogis who ran a canteen in a hospital, some old yogis, they asked if we would like, because they wanted to go on holiday after, if we'd like to run the canteen with another yogi. So we lived in their home in Cambridge for 2 weeks after the Guru Puja. And literally, oh my God, it was like fairy tale land. It was, I don't know, England is still like for us, just like some, the Shire or something from Lord of the Rings. Even
It's
like
very
last,
magical.
in June now, we for the first time since 1989, we drove from Vienna to England. And when we saw the coast, going over in the ferry, I really literally felt, oh my God, this is like just a fairy tale place. It's like so England, all these things. But yeah, so that's when we really, were enamored by England. And we shortly after that, I think, oh yeah, there was the Hanuman Puja. There was a couple of pujas there. And we would always drive in Brigitte's little Volkswagen, packed with our brother and sister and all the luggage. And but I think the night, the Margate Hanuman Puja, and then Sri Mataji actually saw Brigitte at a puja in '89 and told her to phone her. He was like leaving the puja, walking out, and she saw Brigitte and said Brigitte should phone her, and Brigitte was like, okay. And Brigitte was working at the time in painting porcelain at a 300-year-old company in Vienna. And there was no phone there except in the entrance where the porter is. So at lunchtime, she went to this phone and called Sri Mataji from the lobby of this porcelain factory. And Sri Mataji told her she wanted us to come because she wanted to give us 50 oil paintings for selling to start a art business in Vienna. Because like you mentioned, this art. And we were like, oh my God, we don't know anything about business. And I think Sri Mataji sort of picks people that aren't involved in something and bring some, I don't know, some other vibrations into business or something. And so we went. Brigitte picked me up. I was staying in Frankfurt at the time, and she had to drive through the snow alone, and it was a completely crazy situation. And we got to shooting camps, and Sri Mataji, everybody, they were just packing up because she was moving to Pakistan. So we arrived in all this, sort of packing, unpacking. And we went up to Sri Mataji's room, and then she was taking out all these oil paintings. And just the summer before, we had driven to Moscow via Helsinki and Leningrad in our car in one vehicle from Rome. And my sister-in-law, Evelyn, was still in Moscow when we got home. And apparently Sri Mataji said to Evelyn, Edward and Brigitte should move to Frankfurt. So, I applied for, 1989, it was still East and West Germany, and I had to apply for a visa. There was no European Union. And Ian Paradine was there, and he found a job, because Sri Mataji had told me to do picture framing. He found one immediately, and the guy accepted me, and I moved there for 2 months. So it was sort of a weird situation. And then it turned out we weren't meant to stay there because Sri Mataji wanted us to do this business in Vienna. Something happened there in Frankfurt where I think it was a combination of things, because apparently, I don't know if it's true, in a past life I had some really horrible thing happen to me in Germany. And I don't know if it was with the Nazis or not, but my employer was a Nazi.
Oh, really?
So he would say, yeah, the Americans and all these people, they did worse things than Hitler. And I'd go home after work and my heart truck was so catching, I'd be like crying on the bus. And then something happened in the ashram where somebody was coming back, and they had taken their room and they hadn't told them. And there was a little room, and I suddenly, on the day before, I think the day that she was arriving, transformed this little storage room into a beautiful bedroom. And then when this old yogini arrives, everybody was so happy, and the leader patted me on the back and was like rescuing the situation. So when we were before Sri Mataji in shooting camps, she said something like, and I was still at that time quite nervous about talking to her. So, she said, "So you helped me in Frankfurt," and I mumbled something, and she said, "Pardon me?" And I said, "Yes, Your Mataji." For the first time, I spoke confidently because she was asking me a question. "Yes, Your Mataji." And she said, "Okay, thank you." So it was something. Then, then we weren't sure because she had told somebody to tell us to move to Frankfurt. So I really got up my confidence and again, and I said, "So, Sri Mataji, should we do the business in Vienna or Frankfurt?" And then she said, "In Vienna." And I was glad. I was glad I thought of asking because if we had left, oh my God!
So, Uncle Edward, before we go to the shop in Vienna, so let's talk a little bit more about Auntie Brigitte because you select some very nice pictures. And this one.
This is where we were living when, basically when, we came back. We came back from our second India tour. That was 86, 87. And this ashram had been found in Vienna. And everybody was still painting it and everything. So it took a couple of months, but we moved in with all these old yogis who became leaders and things. Wolfgang and Sabina there. And this was 89, Benita's birthday. And from this ashram, I mean, in those days we had no concerns. There was people still studying. There was one yogi who was working for OPEC. Everybody else was sort of free to do, postering and whatever Sri Mataji was telling us to do. And from this ashram, we found out some yogis were going to Finland to start Sahaj Yoga in Finland. They were going to do one program and then go back to their homes. But they needed somebody to stay. And because my grandparents are Finnish, I suddenly had this overwhelming thing. Oh my God, I have to go to Finland. So me and a yogi from Belgium ended up staying there in Finland for several weeks before Sri Mataji, a year before Sri Mataji came. And there's still a couple of people from that time, 1988 in Finland. And a few months later, the same situation with Turkey. It was like people have to go and prepare and do, postering and stuff. And you're free, Ed. Why didn't you go? But somehow I had an hobby at the time because we needed money, and I said, "No, I'm not going." Just the opposite. I was like a donkey. And finally, somebody said, "Somebody's on the phone for you, Edward." And a yogini had paid for the flight, her own flight, and had the money set aside. And she said, "No, I can't go, so I'll give you the flight and the money to go and help in Turkey." So I said, "Okay." And I went with two yogis, to Washington yogis, and we were leafleting on the streets. And I even got arrested by the police.
Oh my God!
It was crazy because they were on the other side of the road and they had the permission. Mm-hmm. I was calling to them. They saw 4 policemen around me and they walked away. So the police took me, and I don't know if you know that movie, that Hollywood movie about that guy that's taken prisoner in Turkey, and he's suffering in these dungeons. So
Which one is it? Okay.
I have these images in my head. I'm sitting with 4 policemen at a little tiny
Oh my God!
car getting taken somewhere. Oh my God! Oh my God! And then the head officer got angry at this one guy. He said, "We have permission to." So, and then last night before the program, before Sri Mataji arrived, on the Bosphorus, there's a huge ferry terminal where all the buses leave from. So everybody comes from the Asian side, like thousands of people a day, get on their buses and go to work in the western side. And all these glass stands all there. It's a huge area. We plastered all these booths, these glass windows with posters. At the end, we're walking with our buckets of glue. It was about midnight, just walking out, and one of these little police cars comes up. And luckily, we had Yusuf with us. Yusuf is originally from Algeria. He's a very relaxed guy. He's Arabian. So he's like, he walks up, "Hey." He gives them a pamphlet. He says, "It's a free program tomorrow. You'd like to come?" And the guys, "Oh, thank you. Very nice." And if they had driven a little bit further, they would have, oh my God, they would have arrested us immediately. But they turned around and went out, and we walked away. And then afterwards, Guido said, after the puja, Mataji had in the program, "So, Edward, would you like to stay and look after the new people in Istanbul? And oh my God, I was so scared. Of course, I said yes, but then I had no idea. I had no idea what to do. Like even in Helsinki, the other guy was doing everything. And then it turned out Akbar was going to stay. So Akbar was doing everything, and I was the helping guy. We had a flat again, inviting the people every day, like I had done in Helsinki, and teaching them about Johns and stuff like that. And that was 1989. And so since that day, Akbar and I are still talking about a huge bus music tour in Iran, where Akbar's from. And we're going to go to all the villages and give realization to everyone. And we had no idea we'd be waiting like, so much longer for this regime to fall. Try to go there and do this, or whatever is meant to happen. But so yeah, like 89 was amazing time. 88, actually, after shooting camps, Brigitte did go back to university, and people were shocked, like, where did you go? And then she made her first Ganesha there, actually, because everybody had to do some nude statues or something, and she thought, I just want to do Ganesha. And the Ganesha was standing there, and even the assistant would sit there and eat his lunch and look at it. There's something very peaceful about it. So yeah, this is when this is at the University for Art in Vienna. And
it's beautiful, the ceramics. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she didn't know what to do and then suddenly the head professor said, why don't you do your graduation in January? And then she had no idea what to do. And again, she was just like, I don't know, maybe I'd like to do some bowls for Mataji's feet. And then she made these massive bowls, and actually 2 of them were used for salt and sugar for Mataji's feet a couple of years later. And and then this Ganesha ended up on 4 international puja stages besides Mataji. And she used to, in those days, she made big statues. One went to Taiwan, and this is now he's in our flat. And the clay for this first Ganesha came from the subway they were making in the very center of Vienna. So it's the actual earth from the center of Vienna under the Stephansdom.
And, Stephansplatz, no? Yeah.
Stephansplatz, yeah. So he's still sitting there in Vienna all these years later. And he was at these different pujas: Akadesha Rudra, Kundalini Puja, Guru Puja, and Ganesha Puja. And Sri Mataji mentioned him at the Ganesha Puja. After the talk, she looked at it and she started talking again. She said, he has this hunter with his whip in his hand, and Sri Jesus used that. And Sri Ganesha also has it, because Sri Ganesha is Sri Jesus.
Yes.
And over at that point in when Sri Mataji gave us the oil paintings, she said she would visit, because then we got a location, in Vienna. And she said she would come there, and then years later, Sir CP got a export license from India, and she said, "We'll send you some things." And I kept trying to give her the money back for this 50 oil paintings, and she said, "No, just go and buy more and continue the business." And after many years, I just transferred probably more than she spent, sum of money to her London account. And I sent her a letter, and she was in Africa, like in Egypt or somewhere. And I guess the lady, the yogini with her, read it to her, and Mataji said, because the letter had such good vibrations, she'd accept the money back after refusing it twice before.
This was because of the shop, not the money from the shop.
Well, it was just for the oil paintings I wanted to do.
Okay, from the oil paintings. Okay, yeah. But let's get to the shop, because these oil paintings, they were bought for the shop, right?
Well, we didn't have a shop or anything at that time. It was 2 years before we even had a shop.
All right, I
see.
see.
When Brigitte got pregnant at the end of 1990, we moved to Delhi, where her sister and brother-in-law were living. And then we had all these ideas. First, we were going to always stay in India. And then, Evelyn's husband had so many connections there. We could buy all these Indian things. So we bought all this beautiful jewelry in Rajasthan, and went back and rented a place, and I rented just a room. and had a sort of exhibition. And then we found this really nice location that was cheap, and I fixed it up. It looked like a 5-star sort of thing, even though we were just in a residential street. Hardly anybody ever saw it. People would walk by and go, "Oh my God, what is this?" And we had all these beautiful things from India, like lacquer boxes and jewelry from Jaipur. At that time, there was things modern Punjabis from Delhi, and I was doing picture framing, and we had all these different things. And Mataji also told us we should do exhibitions in other cities in Europe, which we ended up then doing because Perdita became an international artist and she was exhibiting all over the place. And basically, I didn't realize at the time because I always thought I have to become an independent. I have to have my own career also. But the way, looking back, Mataji set it up that I always have this idea that in past lives I was successful, and I'm put here now to help Perdita because it's her time to make this move. And now it makes sense because apparently it's so weird because at that time a yogini did our horoscope and she said, Edward, you'd be better at art marketing actually than doing art. And I was so traumatized. I was like, oh my God, how can she say that to me? It's terrible. She's probably an artist herself and she's just trying to tell me that. And now after like 37 years later, it's very clear, and I'm really good at getting her stuff out there, which she can't do. So we're like a perfect pair to help each other.
So I would like also to show how I think most yogis in the world, they know this statues, so it was from that statue of Shri Ganesha, then it came to the statue I think that probably is the most popular now, isn't it?
Yeah, she kept on innovating, and she actually, when she was pregnant in 1990, she made the second Ganesha, which was a dancing one, which came from that poster, from Alibag, the dancing deities.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually her second Ganesha, was a small terracotta dancing one. And then since then, she's made many dancing ones, and this was the biggest one. Actually, I have it here beside me. And he's like really amazing. Even
it's beautiful.
Other artists said it's really amazing, the form. The balance of the form. Mm-hmm. In fact, he's sort of glued onto this granite, but he doesn't need to be glued on because he stands exactly balanced, even though he looks like.
Oh.
That was one of many. But when we moved to Vancouver later, and for a couple of years, and then my wife inherited this beautiful property in Austria, and it was just a cottage. It was just a cottage with no heating and no bathroom, and we lived in it for 2 years. So happy because it's got a big property, and a little creek down in the back, and we were just, oh my God. And so there's a picture of the castle, the Handpan that's in the castle, when we were just new here. In the snow outside, I took a picture of that Handpan when she finished it and put it out in the snow. And at that time, there was no purpose for it. She just made it. And then they were looking for a present for Mataji to welcome her back from India to Europe. I guess it was in May or April 2004. And so you can see this picture I took of him outside of our little cottage in the snow. We had no idea, and then they decided to give it as a present from Europe to Shri Mataji on the return from India. We had no idea, like I don't know, I guess forever it'll be standing in the castle. And one yogi told us once, Shri Mataji passed it in the living room on her way to the bedroom, and she did namaste to it.
Oh.
So that was like one of these little blessings.
So, Uncle Edward, so let's now go back a little bit, like to when you went to Helsinki, because you've mentioned that you were driving all over Europe, no? With your own car.
This was the year after I went there. So Shri Mataji went there the first time, and we had driven with 2 vehicles from Rome and Vienna, and then puja in Switzerland. I think at that next evening, Mataji, or a couple of days later, she was doing Krishna puja in England, but we were driving. So we drove up through the night through Sweden and arrived in Helsinki. In Switzerland, there was 14 of us in the two vehicles, and we had all tried to get visas, and it was impossible at the Russian embassy in Switzerland. Matthias was there at the time. And then somebody said it's really easy in Helsinki because it's right on the border. They're used to it. So we all arrived in Helsinki, and I think Matthias went to the Russian embassy, and we all got visas immediately. So we crossed the border. There was puja, and it was so nice because Brigitte was attending Mataji again there in Helsinki. There was nobody else, and there was no other car. So Mataji, they were using our car. So Mataji was sitting in the back of the car, and yeah, there was a tiny puja in a little hall. I mean, it was just a room in the hotel for the few yogis that were there, and somebody had given me somehow I ended up with the Collective International video camera. Like, I think the person had left or something, and so I was filming. Brigitte was showing the ladies how to do the kumkum on the feet during the puja. Now I'm holding the camera there, so we're like right in the sort of inner circle in a way. And yeah, and then we went to Helsinki we drove over to Leningrad, and it was a really weird situation. Well, first of all, the program was huge, because like Mataji says in some talks, people just saw our face in the newspaper, and they all came. They didn't even know what it was about.
And this was the fall of communism at that time.
Yeah, it was just the beginning of perestroika. So 89, it was just the very, very beginning. So there was no food in the restaurants or anything, and one of the leaders, Guido, brought cartons of Marlboro cigarettes for buying things in Russia. So there'd always be long lineups at the gas stations, and both of our vehicles needed diesel. So we just go to the front, offer the guy a Coca-Cola or a pack of cigarettes, and we get our diesel immediately for free, and then we drive on. And so that's how we got through. But yeah, the situation in Leningrad, Mataji mentioned is also in a talk that so many people were there. And she said, "Why are you standing outside and all this?" And she told them they could come the next day in the afternoon. So we were basically in the edge of the parking lot under a cover thing. Mataji is sitting on a chair, and all of us with all these Russian people, and I just on some steps, I think, concrete steps. I was working on this old lady for a little while, and then she sort of looked up at me, like her eyes were like glowing like a baby. She just looked like she was in complete bliss. And then in the evening at the big program inside the hall in the stadium, she found me somehow among the thousands of people, and she had brought an apple for me. It was like the most precious thing that she could bring, and she handed me this apple with this glowing smile. So that was like my first experience of Russia. It's like these people were so humble and so collective, very collective. Wow. and natural. But there was a weird situation. The bridges go up in the night for the boats to go through. So we all went from we stayed in a hostel, but we went to Mataji's hotel room, and it was a normal size hotel room with a bed in it. I think the bed took most of the area. And we were all packed in there, sitting all over her bed and everywhere, and she was giving presents out to everybody. I think there was about 10 yogis in Russia at that time. And then the rest of us, some others came also. And then we all had to they said, "Come on, we have to go, the bridges are going up." So we all left, and there was nobody, basically. And there was wrapping things all over the place, because somebody said, "Can you run back up and we have to take the chairs out of the hallway and put them back in Mataji's room." Mm-hmm. And me and another guy ran up and said, "Mataji, maybe bring the chair." And she was sitting there looking really serious. She looked over and said, "Yes. And here's your messy bedroom with all these wrappings and nobody to attend to." Mm. And afterwards I thought, "Oh my God, this is the very first day or second day of Russia." And it was very, Yeah, not so organized. And then in Moscow, after the program in the stadium, Shimadaji's out in the parking lot with the leaders, and the car didn't come. It just didn't come. You know? And then
Oh my
Guido
god.
sees me at the top of the stairs and shouts, he's like, "Hey, go get your car." And I ran around the stadium. I think I felt like I was three Hanneman with Kerma. Ran, got the car, ran, came as fast as I could around the big stadium and pulled it up, opened the door, left the keys in, and then the leaders all got in some Mataji. But in Russia at that time, the vibrations were so strong. There was no church or anything like that. We'd be driving through the night, and I could always feel the Kundalini pushing at the top of my head, like pushing on the bone.
Wow.
It's like wide awake the whole time. You had to be wide awake because there's potholes all over the highway. Right around the potholes. And we had just got this new car. It was a Renault 19, very sleek car. And everybody was driving these Rabats or whatever. So we were going around that big circle in Moscow. And everybody's looking, oh my God, what is that? And then I went back 4 years later to Puja and Taviati in Moscow, and there's posters all over the place for, basically the consumerism had arrived with perestroika. It was BMWs and Mercedes all over the place. But the drive back was weird because we had to go through Poland, and as soon as I crossed the border into Poland, my eyes cross-eyed, like my back egg, I couldn't stay awake. And for a while, I remember driving with one hand because my eyes kept crossing all the time.
Because of the church, you think?
I think because of the church, and maybe somebody said because of all the dead from the war, World War II. I mean, this
All
is
right.
1989. There wasn't much time between the war and the. And we tried to find a place to sleep, and we asked somebody on the street, and my friend has a restaurant. We can sleep on the floor. at the end, I just said to Guido, I said, "I'm so tired, but we're going to drive home. We're so close now." We're in Poland. We just had to cross through Czechoslovakia, and then.
It's actually a long ride, actually.
I know, but just with such horrible vibrations, and Guido said, "No, Eddie, don't go. Leave me. Don't leave." I said, "No, we decided we're going to go." And the weird thing about the East Bloc at that time is that people would line up for kilometers in their little cars to get out of, occupied territory just to go for a holiday in the West.
All right.
And then they would tell us to go to the front. They said, "No, you can go to the front." So we go to the front, and then these very communist type of military people would check all our papers and everything. And after an hour or so, they'd let us go through. And but it was so sad, like I used to wonder, because I'm from Canada, I didn't see anything like this. I thought, why? What kind of government would keep the people like a prison inside the country, not let them get up? What is the mentality of that? Because they know that everybody would leave if they could.
Yeah, the concept of, I think, of freedom, and also it's so big now, the Canada, it's so big, like a lot of North American countries, that also, like, you drive just a few hours is another country, and then it's another border.
I know. That was really weird. There's different languages, and there was no European Union, so we had to cross borders all the way through. And we drove to show our passports and wait.
Uncle Edward, so let's now talk a little bit about the shop there in Vienna. So you had the shop that Mataji suggested to open, right?
Yeah, so we found this nice location, very cheap, and the city of Vienna even fixed it up, put a big, beautiful window in, and so we had all these beautiful things from India, and then there was a couple of yogini artists who also put their things there, and yeah, just when we got the shop, then our baby was born. So I don't know, something in our horoscope also. It was like, sort of the top of the world. You're the shop owner, and you've got a baby, and all these. And so it was more or less a hobby, in a way. Eventually, it turned into Brigitta's workshop. She started doing more ceramic. And then towards the end, we had an amazing experience we went to Washi. Like it was our son, 1998. Our son went to India for the first time. He had been 3 years in the Rome ashram in preschool, and then he started 98 up in Dharamshala, and so that started a lot of India travel twice a year, India, and so we had this. Yeah, it sort of became we did this workshop, and then in '99 we went to Washi, and we took Lincoln up to the school, and I had this most amazing experience. They literally got all my catches away, and except for this Lefnovi, which started again, causing problems. But I had complete thoughtless awareness. I couldn't even think. Like I tried to think, and I would get sort of little whispery sounds. And I was like totally witnessing myself walking around, like my hands and stuff, and which was good because I went through a lot of difficulties later from this whole childhood things. But I had this one time, where I knew, wow, I could be in fate. And then we decided, oh my God, because Brigitte was suffering a bit. She had some problems, I think also from her childhood. So we decided, okay, we're going to make plans. We're going to do everything 100% vibrations. So at that point, I think we even thought we'd go to Nagpur and study in the academy, which it didn't happen. But first thing we got back, and we gave up the shop, and we decided to move out of Vienna. There was a new ashram in the countryside, and they were just building a new room onto it. I said, okay, Brigitte, we got to get you to Cabela. We went to Saugstad, and she stayed in the castle, which is really amazing because Mataji was there some of the time. But it was full, like a couple of years before I worked, we did the big white outside of the castle. And at that time, Mataji came back from America. She said she was feeling sick. So normally she travels every week to a different country, since the 1980s. So for the first time, she was there in the castle for like the whole 5 months that me and these other guys were staying there. We were like below her bedroom. I don't know. She was like 6 meters above us or something most of the time. And when we're out on the scaffolding, she was just inside the window. And I just told somebody a few months before. I said, Sahaj Yoga is getting so big now. It's impossible to even get close to Mataji because there's so many projects and people and countries. And then within a few months, I was in a situation where just living with Mataji in his house. And it was an ashram, so all the rooms were full of families with little kids. And I had an experience at the end. It was in November. It was really cold outside, but me and another guy were still out in the dark cleaning up. And everybody had gone in for dinner. So there was like 5 families with all the kids, plus I think we were like 10 workers. And I lay on the grass up, where the parking lot is behind Mataji's parking lot at the back. And I looked up, and you could see it was really like almost winter, and you could see billions of stars. And I called this other yogi over, and I said, just lie here for a second. I said, do you realize like there's billions of stars in this universe, and below us in this house, like with the yellow glowing windows, warm house, there's about 25 of us or 30 of us living with Adi Shakti in all these universes. And how the heck did we end up here? It's impossible to fathom. And by the end of that time, I remember I became so sensitive. I'd be sitting in foot soak in the, there's actually a picture of the meditation room downstairs in the castle now. There used to be 2 rooms. So we slept in this little narrow room, everybody lying in their sleeping bags. And in that area outside where you enter, we used to do foot soak. So yeah, so now it's one big room, but this was just a skinny little room that we entered through this door. And we had all our sleeping bags spread out, like 10 of us. And that's how we slept for months. We worked 6 days a week, about 10 hours a day, taking down all the old plaster off the walls, and the whole outside was covered with scaffolding. And that's how we lived, just like that. And so what was I going to say? Yeah, anyway, at the end, I was doing foot soak, and when I had my eyes closed in foot soak, somebody walked in front of me, I would know who it was. Like I became so sensitive I could just like sort of see or feel, and I opened my eyes every time, and it was that person.
So you could recognize the person just by vibrations.
Yeah, I think we were just so connected, everybody by Saugstad and living with Mataji, you could just know, like with your eyes closed, somebody would go by and you just know who it was. I don't know if I pictured it but I would just know it, And then each time I opened my eyes, I would see, it happened again, Like, so I think a lot of things worked out there. And then 2 years later, there's a picture of Gita working in Mataji's bedroom doing the cornicing, like 10 years before in the shooting camps. And so we have a couple of pieces of the old cornicing and pieces of rock from the castle. At our place, we collected all these things, put them around for vibrations.
So this is a very nice picture that you've sent also, like
So,
working there.
That's like, oh my God, 1997 till last year I was back there posing. And it was, oh yeah, there was another thing happened there. I had this idea that, because you imagine we were full on the right side the whole time. And I think Mataji even mentioned it in one of the pujas. He said, when you go on the right side, he said, I also feel that. And at the time I thought, oh my God, we're like working 6 days a week and we'll never come down off the right side. And then I had an idea, I got Brigitte to bring our whole, the video cassettes, the big video cassettes. We had all these movies. She brought the whole collection, and every week I'd put up the big poster in the morning, hanging in the kitchen where we got our breakfast, saying, this movie this evening with Coca-Cola and popcorn, and everybody would be so excited all day, oh my God, this movie evening. And there was some little TV, old-fashioned TV and cassette. You could see Star Wars or whatever.
Wow.
Eating popcorn and drinking Coke. That was my little contribution. And then I, in a way, I think I got a reward because Mataji once asked Sandeep if there's any movies for her and Sadhana. Came down and asked me, and I had all these Audrey Hepburn movies. So I gave them to him, and then they sort of disappeared. But after a couple of weeks, he came down and handed them to me. And I think he said something like, congratulations, because Mataji enjoyed it so much. He even went to the trouble of making sure that Sandeep gave them back. So that was like one of these little things that you feel like you're in this other universe with the yogis and Sri Adi Shakti.
So we have also some other pictures here that you've shared with us. So it's 1991 in Austria.
Yeah, that was the year that Lincoln was born. I think we met. I don't know if that was in. Oh yeah, this was Lincoln 2 months old in Kabbalah in the cold, in a big circus tent after the puja, and we had already, when Brigitte was 3 months pregnant, we were sitting in Futsok in our little flat in Vienna and just going through some names, And then suddenly I said the word Lincoln, and we both burst out laughing, like in our Futsok. And she was only 3 months pregnant. We didn't know if it was a boy or a girl or anything. And so we never said the baby after that in her stomach. We always said Lincoln.
Wow.
Lincoln's coming. And when we told her there, she said, "Oh, such a beautiful name. You should keep it."
Wow. It's probably. I mean, I never heard any other child called Lincoln. No,
there's one in England, Eric. I think he named his son Lincoln.
Oh, right. Okay.
But
But it's very few, right? Very few yogis, no?
Yeah, I think it's one.
Lincoln.
Oh, there's one in Africa also, yeah. So
really? Okay.
There's also.
All right. So and this also in Kabbalah, right? Yeah. So many of the
early one was this was 91, 92. That was right in the beginning, in the circus tent, pujas down by the river. And there was one on the table. Actually, the one on the table is the second Ganesha she made, which was the dancing one. So that was the decoration. And then this one being presented, I think, was being given as a present to Rome or something, and it was being presented to Mataji. And then there's a story about the Ganesha in Mataji's living room that's apparently there forever. sometime in the 2000s. I don't know what year it was. Brigitte was making this Ganesha, and Guru Puja was coming, and she just had the feeling, like overwhelming feeling, she wanted to give a personal present to her guru, and you're not allowed to do that at the pujas. You can only give national, you know. But anyway, we went there. And those days we used to put Ganeshas on the stage that we had with us, and the first time ever, because you know the pujaris are very alert. They always bring everything and they take everything and they clean it and take it away. Some pujari picked up the Ganesha and took it to the castle, which had never happened before and never happened afterwards. And that was the exact present Brigitte wanted to give to her guru, and now it
Wow.
stays forever in the castle. So the Ganesha is somehow cooperated.
I thought that, and also it's so good to see. Yeah, you are both as a couple that you worked a lot also well in with your work, your career, or you received many orientations and many blessings from Shri Mataji as a couple, also
Yeah,
working together. David and Lila is the same, like in this area also
yeah,
they
we
worked a
do.
lot, and you felt that like our Nabi is a blessing that we receive in our marriages. Yeah. So what you can share about this, and for yuvas and people that are getting married nowadays, we have many. We worry a lot about career,
Yeah,
profession, things like that.
yeah. I think you know last year they made videos of married couples, old married couples for Sahaj Yogis to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And we did one. Actually, I'll mention now that if anybody wants to, if they look up Edward Saugstad online on YouTube, I've got over 150 videos. One of them is this marriage video. If they go back to last year, they can find it. But
The
you
link
can,
in the description. We left the link for
yeah, yeah.
edwardsaugstad.com.
Also, yeah, there's that the YouTube, and also I've got a blog, a public blog, which is edwardsaugstad.com, the Yogi blog, which I gave the link for.
Mm-hmm.
And also, all these things happened in 2007. Facebook, I started the blog, I started my YouTube, and the following year, I wrote my first children's book since I was on Amazon. So, on my blog, on my public blog, I think I have about 350 blog posts since
Wow.
the last 16 years, just to sort of common daily life things that mix vibrations and Saj Yoga and heart opening things that people can just one thing that happened with my public blog many years ago when Stephen Jobs died, the Apple founder,
Mm-hmm.
I went on, at that time, I was still into trying to promote my blog, just to share vibrations, you know. And I wrote in an online American newspaper that had an article about Steve Jobs. I just mentioned something about him, and because I made a blog post about him, and then I gave the link because you can give links in the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
papers. And some New York journalist clicked on my blog and to look at the Steve Jobs article I'd written, but she found one of my pages on there is all about Ganesha. Everything you want to know about Ganesha, even details like in Disney, the cartoons they make, they have these rounded forms, which are so appealing,
Mm.
and coconuts and all the swine boos and the whole story of how he was created, like everything you wanted to know about Ganesha, which I think eventually Google discovered that there must be an authority because they send everyday people to this blog post that they want to know about Ganesha. So what this lady did, I think she linked it, this journalist in New York.
Oh, yeah.
She left a
Links were a
comment.
big thing.
Yeah, she left a comment. She said, "You know, I came here to look what you said, see what you said about Steve Jobs." And she said, "I discovered this because she's an American, but I think she loves Ganesha also." And so
Mm-hmm.
she was so excited, you know. And then in the last 15 years or something, this article has become like an authority of Ganesha according to Google. And so yeah, these various things all started about 2007, and so basically I tried to send original content into the internet because most people just forward things. But every time I try to create something and put something with vibrations in. That's in different aspects, like with the arts or whatever.
All the links will be in the description. It really also shows how the creativity, it's also very powerful, coming from you and from your marriage. So I think this is very inspiring for a lot of people now who want to also to put their name on the list.
Yeah, another thing is that because we complement each other, because I can do things she can't, and then she can do things. I mean, basically, I think Sri Mataji saved me by marrying me to her, because one of the things she's good at is we can check vibrations about anything, and she can feel her kundalini. Like, it's not like cool or hot, but she can even feel what kind of question it is. Like afterwards when you look at it, it's like, okay. But she can feel the difference between that do it or not do it, like on folded pieces of paper. So this has basically really helped us over the years. We were able to, so many things we did, even unorthodox sort of things that really helped us, where normally we wouldn't have thought of doing it. Like somebody would suggest something, and then we'd check, oh, it's good, and then we'd try it, like different various things. And one example is Mataji came in the end. She visited Russia and Austria as her last trips, and we had been booked already for 6 months to go to Canada. And not only were we booked so long, but our flights, which are expensive, but I had organized a big family reunion, because I had found two sisters and a brother that we had never met before, who got separated from us when they were born. And I found them and brought us back together. I organized a big family reunion, and I organized a big school reunion where hundreds of us used to be friends in this neighborhood in the 70s. And something was wrong with the visa or something, And then finally, Brigitte, like just 2 weeks before the flight, she said, maybe I should check vibrations. So she checked, and it was really bad vibrations that we should fly.
Oh my God.
Without even knowing why, we immediately canceled it and lost, 600 euros or something. And then a few days later, we found out Mataji had decided to come to bless Nirmal Prasht, the ashram we had together in Vienna. I remember you, David, you were sitting there.
Yeah, I remember.
But Brigitte hadn't finished the bathroom. She was done this rose border in the bathroom, and most of it wasn't complete. And if we had been in Canada and she had heard Mataji finally came to the house and her bathroom was still missing half of the tiling, she would have been so finished. And so just based on vibrations, we canceled our flight, and then we found out she was coming. Oh my God. The very last day, like hours before Mataji arrived at the airport, I had to take these rose borders out of the kiln at 200 degrees at 6 a.m, and we raced over to Nirmal Prasht, and we had to mount them. There were 10 people working in the bathroom over each other and fixing things. But that was another example of sort of complementary. A lot of things Brigitte told me that she could never have done with her art and stuff if I hadn't been here. Because I'm sort of, sometimes I say I haven't done much, But I'm also good at building, and I really love Kabbalah because, like, Mataji gave us this huge property for free, basically, and I built so many things here. And in Kabbalah, it's sort of a free place because nobody has time to do anything. So if anybody does do anything, they're happy. So most of the time, I don't even have to ask. I just build something. Oh my God, that's so nice, and everybody's happy. So in a way, it's like a freedom of creativity also. So it's just, I don't know.
So talking about vibrations, so there was one story I think that you didn't tell yet. So that's the story about the ticket to Budapest, right?
Yeah, that was, I was in Budapest. We get to stay at home that time. Actually, I should mention the first time, a couple of years before this, was the first time Mataji went to Hungary. And somebody went ahead and they were going to put her in somebody's house, not even with her own room. Like, she would have had to sleep in the living room or something. And we arrived. Mataji was coming at noon the next day, and a few of us then arrived and said, "Oh, wait, oh my gosh." And we were looking and looking, and it was 9 o'clock at night. We still had nothing for Mataji to live in, for the next day. And we went back to this sort of rental place, an office. And somebody at the back, I don't know, I think it might have been Sri Hanuman in disguise or something. This really nice person came from the back behind the counter and said he overheard us asking for something special. And he said they have this house, it's a complete house, and you can have it for the weekend. And this was 9 at night. And he said, "Oh my God, yes, we'll take it." And then he gave us the keys. We paid, and we went to this house, and we had to do everything in one night. We had to decorate it all, had to clean it. I was out there at 3 in the morning mowing the long grass. And then Mataji arrived at noon, and the house is all decorated with saris and flowers and everything. And at that time, we had a weird leader who went out of Sahaja Yoga, and he was always looking for these cheap things. And but the next time, we just decided, we said, we're getting the presidential suite at the Hyatt. Doesn't matter what it costs, And we ended up, and anyway, then afterwards, Mataji always stayed in that suite. But so that time in '95, I was there, and I was traveling with Yogis in the car, and we had to go to Prague after. And then Brigitte, I think there was 4 Yogis booked with Mataji in the airplane. And then Brigitte, I talked to her on the phone. She booked me on the airplane. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was the only time I flew with Mataji. And so we were in first class, which was not really first class, because it was a small flight. But we were right at the front. And one yogi was reading a newspaper. Mataji was just across the aisle from me, I think 3 seats away. And I had this little prayer I used to do in my mind, like, Mataji, please give me pure attention and pure desire. So Mataji looked like she was sleeping over in the other row. And I was sitting there and I was saying the prayer in my head. And then suddenly, halfway through, Mataji looked over at me. I got really nervous. I sort of stopped. And then she put her head down again. And I quickly, in my mind, I finished the prayer. And so that was my one time that I realized Mataji just hears whatever you're thinking. It's like easy for her. She just hears whatever you're thinking.
So, and then, so this is also another picture that you've add to your selection.
This has become a very famous picture. That's our son right in the middle there with the
Lincoln.
desperate expression. Yeah. Mataji, here's my flowers. That was in the train station.
Okay, just moving ahead. Okay.
After that was his first year. It would have been '98. First year to India school, and we went to Ganapatipuli then for the first time. After, well, it was a couple of years with us. Oh wait, sorry, 98. It would have been like 11 years since we had been to Ganapatipuli, and we brought our son with us that time. And there's that Swayambhu. I don't know if you know that. It's Ganesha's on that hill. And in the beginning, I don't know how it is now, but you were only allowed to go around the whole hill clockwise before you could go up to the Swayambhu. And I remember one evening coming back from that tiny pendal where we got married in the puja and the programs. We were very naughty. It was like 3 in the morning, and Brigitte cut straight up through the bushes, breaking protocol, and just at 3 in the morning under a full moon, we just sat there. Oh my gosh, sat there. So strong vibrations, and we couldn't have imagined that 12 years later we'd have a little boy that's going to school in India, sitting there taking this picture.
So there's really a lot of Sri Ganesha connecting your marriage and your story, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And this is '99 in Mataji's bedroom. And Brigitte, after many years in Shruti camps, after Shruti camps, she got to do cornicing in Mataji's bedroom. The gold. I think she was doing the gold leaf. And that would be the period when after Vashi, when we decided to do everything perfect. So we went to Saugstad, and then Brigitte stayed in the castle, and she found a storage room that was full of stuff. She really, the one thing she discovered in Vashi was that she needs, if she just gets into a creative flow, everything becomes normal, like perfect inside of her. And So she was sort of stuck in the castle with all these families, and she had no place to really, work with clay and stuff. And then she found the storage room, and Sandeep said, yeah, she can clean it out. So when I arrived a few weeks later, because I think I'd gone, I used to take the Austrians to the puja. Every June there was a puja in New Jersey. So I used to organize these big groups from Austria, and we'd all go rent mini buses and go to these pujas. And I came back and I went to Guru Puja, and by that time she had this room, which was a nice little room at the back of the castle under the steps with a terrace outside. And she had been making Ganeshas there, and we had this little room to stay in. And that year turned out to be really fantastic because, we moved to that ashram in the countryside. We didn't go to Nagpur, but at the Krishna Puja in Kabbalah, somebody came up to me and said, Shmataji is building a house in America. I was like, oh my God, no way. And then me and two other guys went there from Austria, and we were with Lothar staying in the UKV ashram.
That's the a house in New Jersey, right?
Yeah. So like the whole thing with Nagpur was canceled. It was like, no way, Shmataji is building a house in America. We have to be there. So I went there with Lothar and two other guys. And, it was sort of a slow beginning. And then we decided, another thing I decided, which was interesting, just after Vashu, when Brigitte was in Kabbalah, I was so clear, I had a meditation in our flat, and suddenly I thought of a yogi who's married to an Austrian in the northern United States who was going to move to the south, and he was building sun decks on his own. And I just thought, we could move with them, and I could build with him. We could live in the south where it's warm and have a really cool life outside of Europe. And so I stopped my meditation. I phoned him. I think it was 6 in the morning in Ohio. And I told him my idea. He said, wow, that's a really good idea. And so 1 year later, we planned it. So 1 year later, we moved to North Carolina.
Oh my God.
I learned how to build all the sun decks, which I built also in Kabbalah. And another interesting story is in the beginning when I moved to Europe, the leader in Vancouver changed her mind and wanted to get us back there. So she was sending us these letters. Oh, I think you should bring Brigitte over here, and eventually the Austrian leader asked her, Mataji, and she said, no, it's not good for Edward. He had a horrible time there, and basically. So, and then fast forward 15 years later, we're living in North Carolina, but without a visa, and I hurt my back a bit, so I couldn't. We were trying to figure out where else we could go in North America. And Christmas came, and I tell this to Indians, and they can't believe it. But 15 years on, my parents had never met my wife or my son, who by that time was 11 years old or something, because we'd go to India twice a year from Austria, and we never had money to go to Canada. It's so far as expensive. And I'm from a big family. There's lots of brothers and sisters, and I was the one who, anyway, was the seeker and all that. So it was a weird. So we decided to go to Christmas from North Carolina, and we flew to Seattle. Where at that time they had a big ashram and all these buildings were in there. And we were sitting around the living room 2 days before Christmas, and the leader of America from New York was there on business. So we're all sitting in the living room. And after about half an hour, he said, oh, Ed, Mataji mentioned you last time in LA. She said, what is he doing? And I said, we were working with Gary in North Carolina. She said, that's good. And then she said, why doesn't he move to Vancouver? So here Brigitte and I are just on our way for the first time to Vancouver.
Oh my God.
We find out Mataji said, you should move there. So we arrived there and said, guess what? We are moving to Vancouver. It was, oh my God. And I didn't tell my parents, my mom. So we moved there next June. We rented a big moving truck, and we hooked our car on the back, and we drove the 5,000 kilometers from one corner of North America to the other. We had it all planned out with stops. And basically, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in the mid-90s, I heard Mataji bought an ashram in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, Canada, probably Toronto. And then I heard it's Vancouver, because Canada is so big, and Vancouver is also
It's massive, isn't it?
And then I heard she bought a house in Surrey, which was the worst area. We used to go stealing cars in Surrey. It was like this dark area where it had really lousy vibrations, and it had been built up. There was all these rich houses, and she bought an ashram 23 blocks from my mom's place where I grew up. And
Oh my God.
seeking, and I just, it was 1995 or something. I just shook my head and I said, "No, I don't understand anything." So we ended up moving there into that house for 2 years, and in all my years in Sahaj Yoga, I was never a leader, but in the end, I was sort of the ashram leader. And when we got there, there were 7 families living in this house, all packed together, and some people weren't even talking to each other. And after 2 years, it was just best friends. There was the payment family and us and a couple of other people. It was a luxury house with 9 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms and the chandelier and the wooden staircase. And I think we had the best year in our whole lives of 2003. And we went to, I remember at the end of that year, we drove to LA. We flew to LA and rented a van for the whole ashram. Lincoln and I went ahead and went to Disneyland. During the week in November, it was empty. We had the whole Disneyland to ourselves. And a big puja weekend coming up in a hotel on the beach with all the yogis. And then we got this huge van in the whole ashram. We were driving around. We went to Mataji's house a couple of times to pick up food or something. And in this hotel, Mataji was staying also for the puja weekend. And I had the most amazing experience on the Saturday morning. And somebody told me later, you get luck if your Nabi chakra is perfectly balanced, you get into a state of luck. And I had the breakfast there, and then I was just floating. I thought, well, I think I'll just go up to the room. I don't know. And I walked up to the lift and pushed the button, and the lift opened, and Mataji was right in front of me. And she gave this amazing puja talk. It was really short. And in this puja talk, she said, someday in history, you may not believe it now, but she says, you're going to have such high and noble destinies that you'll listen to my talk again, and you'll realize that I prophesied it, and I told you in advance that you're going to have these high and noble destinies. And every time something, I really get doubts about what's going on, I just remember that, and I think, Mataji, she wrote the whole story, and she could see exactly each Sahaj Yogi also, because each yogi is in her body, and the main thing is that we love Mataji. So she can work with us easily. She can see our timeline, and she can, if we need this, she can just put this in our way. Or if we need to go that way, she can push us. And so I think each of us, she knows exactly, the whole way through. And of course, the whole story of the whole planet.
She's really the script writer now of the whole story.
And recently, I was feeling so comforted by that, because I felt really doubting about what am I doing with my life. Most of the time, I'm not even doing what she told us to do, which was just to stay in the state and give the state to others. 99% of the time is just mundane. And a few months ago, I just realized I have to be worrying about this, because I'm a writer also, and I realized that even long before the earth was created, she created deities and rakshasas, and they were fighting, and she just made it all for Sri Sadashiva, who's watching it, and he's getting. And as a writer, I know you have to have tension in the story, and all the things that the yogis are going through now, they get really scared, and oh my God, what's going on? But I mean, it's part of stories are boring if you don't have that tension, Like a couple of years ago, I almost died in the hospital after being sick for a few years. And
oh my God, I didn't know that. Okay.
Mataji made a real climax. It could have been easy, it could have been okay, but no. The thing I was working out from my childhood took already many years, in which I was living in the fear of death.
So it was actually linked, the problem that took you to the hospital and your childhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I realized that myself, because things come up later in life in your body if you're not faced out. So even like the life in Sahaj Yoga was like a honeymoon for me, like my first India tour, which I got sick afterwards. And but that intense fear already worked out a lot. And instead of just fixing it at the end, she made it the worst possible. And even we have a yogi astrologer here, and he told me Vita ever can't be operated at this time. It's the worst time. And by chance, we heard a general horoscope online somewhere, and it said that brave people, if they face their boundaries at this time, they can expand their boundaries even more. So because the vibrations were good, we had the fixed. It was during the lockdown also, during the pandemic. So I don't want to go through the hassle. It's fixed, the vibrations are good. And then there was a complication where they were actually poisoning me with medicine. So I was dying, not just for a few hours, but for 48 hours. I was literally dying and falling into coma. And it was so crazy because, I mean, I thought Mataji knows everything, and here I am, and they're not noticing. And I even asked them what's going on. And they said, no. Even one nurse even said, "What's the matter with you? Are you scared or something?" And I, said, I laughed. I said, "Yeah, I am scared." And so I thought, oh, this is too good. I mean, you can't have this, randomly. And then by the end, like they just saved my life. At the end, I was falling into coma. I lost the control of my nervous system. And even up to that point, I was like, this is like the characters are coming. It was an old-fashioned hotel with a high 3 rooms. And these characters are coming in. The one nurse that insulted me, and then the two old men sitting there, noticing that I was shaking and stuff. And so even that situation taught me that, in fact, yeah, because that was the actual crucial point where I just got over the fear of death, which I had from my childhood. It was a crazy situation then. With the drunken parents, screaming, me breaking. I kept breaking my bones when I was small, even as a baby. And I hadn't been in the hospital for 55 years, and here I was during a pandemic where something is going wrong and nobody is paying attention, and I was just waiting. And so, yeah, I got literally over the fear of death, and Mataji had obviously played it out. And again, like philosophically, I wonder why did I have to go through all that? But I think it was really because I could have easily floated on my ego through this life. It's the last chance, it's the last chance for each of us. And if there's any chance of it going astray, us going astray, Mataji will give us everything we need, because I'm sure that's what we wanted to make it this time. And that's what I needed. And so for the last 3 years, I've been basically completely free from all these issues. Even in my horoscope, that showed that I had a reset year. And when I was going into coma, it was like my whole brain was almost finished. So that's like a reset also. And then I had sort of 2 years of new begin. And this year, literally, I have no issues to work out, so I can do anything I want. Like any creative thing I want, I can just do it. Whatever. There's nothing inside me that I have to struggle with. So, but literally, I imagine Mataji, for each of us, has this timeline where she knows exactly what to do with us to get us fixed to her. And I've known yogis, even a couple of leaders, had horrible childhoods. And I think the trauma is really important in a way, especially people like us who have big ego, that to just fix onto her, just fix on and not let go, because that's our only chance. If we use our freedom and float off in a yellow balloon, then it's tragic.
Wow. So that did Mataji speak about anything about the Armageddon, the apocalypse?
That time I went in '85 down to California. We started in Dr. Walker's living room. A whole bunch of yogis. I mean, there was hardly any yogis. In '82, I think there was like 7 yogis in America and 7 in Canada. And this was '85, so 3 years later. There was a handful in California. Most of them had moved there, I think. So we were in Dr. Warlicker, famous Dr. Warlicker's living room. And the men were sleeping in the living room. Mataji was in their bedroom. And the ladies were in the spare bedroom. And I think after the program, we were sitting, for the next day, sitting in the living room on the floor. And then, actually, it's on Amrita. I found it after all these years. I just got the impression Mataji was or my memory was that one of the yogis had asked the question and Shimadaji had answered it. But when I looked at I read the transcript also, and Dr. Walliker's reading some of the questions that were handed in on paper from the program the previous evening. And so this one person had asked, what about the last judgment? And so Shimadaji basically described what's happening. And the impression that I always had was, well, first impression was, no, that couldn't be true. She didn't do a program in LA. She was basically just there, and then we did the programs in San Diego. And I thought she's probably saying that because all the brutes in LA are listening, getting freaked out because Shimadaji mentioning this, which I mean, she did mention in India once. She mentioned about that prophecy one time, and then another time she mentioned about Kalki and how Kalki, when the time comes, all these people doing wrong things in India will, regret it. But she sort of described it, and then I thought, yeah, maybe it's true someday, but it's like somehow that sort of hell comes onto earth, And the impression I get now is that because what Sri Vishnu is doing is that individual and collective karma has to be faced now. It all has to be faced. There's nowhere to hide. Everything is becoming transparent, and those people who are doing wrong things are there. But it even happens country-wise. If there's something in the past where the people have wrong attitude, then something's going to happen.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely. I think a lot because also the internet and a lot of things are being found out and a lot of things are being exposed, no?
Yeah. But I think it's just basically Sri Vishnu's in control of it. It's all happening and it's speeding up. And basically, yeah, even I heard astrologically that the frequency of the planet is going higher. So I think in a way it's like people don't take to this way. They don't want the realization and don't enjoy that and get into that. Will really suffer because they're stuck in this thing that's going out of evolution, basically. That's it. And then you're going to see all this struggle and all this craziness. So basically, according to what Shimadaji said, I mean, at first she said something interesting. She said that us yogis or whoever we can call yogis will go to India. But how Shimadaji said God often changes the plan. And then she mentioned something when this Nirmal Prasht area was bought in Vienna. She said this could also be like Kabbalah, like a safe place. So the impression I got was that, okay, we're not all going to India. There's going to be, we come to, safe places. But I think she said something also about that area in Vienna that in the countryside that it could be safe, like Kabbalah, but you have to watch out for the people then because they could try to harm you. And so, from what she described in LA that time, I got the impression that, and I have the feeling it's a very short thing because, the way the mother works is a very soft and slow thing. So we're used to that sort of soft and slow. But when the father, even to the extent I had the feeling like with the father and the son, when Shimadaji said this, human beings are useless if they're not seeking God. When she starts talking like that, I had the feeling it's not the mother actually, like technically that's not the mother talking, that's the father or the son, because they don't stand that. So we're sort of used to the mother thing, but I've always had the feeling that all this is going to happen like within our lifetime, which telling yogis that, I got the impression that generally yogis don't believe that because they don't feel like we're ready. That's the general sort of opinion. It's like, no, it's going to take
But
another 2 generations, maybe 50, 100 years. But it's not based on how we are. Like we don't even know how we are because Maya is so thick. I have the feeling it's a little bit like, Sri Sadashiva pushes Adishakti away. Like she would love just to go back to Sadashiva, but he pushes it away because he's watching this creation, and she is pushing us into the Maya. Is like sometimes you just, oh my God, and then after a few days, you just, where have I been? Like, I'm so close. So I have the feeling we don't even know, literally how. Like somebody asked Engelbert the other day, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know within this time frame if I can make it somewhere. And Engelbert just said, we're already the spirit. He said to me also once when we were walking out in the forest, he goes, this bond of love we have with Mataji is so strong. You can't separate us. It's impossible. So I think one of the problems is that all our chakras and everything are working out all these problems. And it's really, like Mataji said once, you're in between Adi Shakti and the deities and the negativity. And in between you have the yogis. The yogis are trying to struggle to find their. But
But
yes,
I think we shouldn't worry, no, because in the end, I'm sure that will be paradise on earth.
yeah.
Huh?
And I think it's because everything's accelerating so fast. I have the feeling it's because, I was going to say that yogis base it on what they think they're like and what we've done to get everybody into Sahaj Yoga. But I think it's based also, it's easier to see if you look at it in a bigger way. Like if you see what's happening to the planet, if you see how the evil is rising and getting exposed, and also how the Param Chaitanya, like even the tour in Austria now, everybody's, oh my God, it changed everything. The vibrations all changed. It was so much love and joy. And it's like almost like a parallel universe. We're like, no, we got to get everybody in. But I think in Sattva Yuga anywhere, there'll be people who are not in that state, but they'll be like, it's like we can take care of them. Like I was discussing with one yogi, it's like, because life always needs a challenge. So what is the challenge in Sattva Yuga? And we had the feeling we'll be like shepherds, but there will be also a population of people that look up to us and we can express all these beautiful things about divinity. And apparently Shimadaji said before the destruction of Sri Kalki, she said to one yogi, something will happen through this development of our Ekadash Rudas that many yogis will become the spirit. And he tried to ask what that means, which he didn't explain. Many yogis will become the spirit, and that will enable even non-seekers at the last minute to take it if they want, to get their self-realization. So I always had the feeling there'll be sort of a quick thing happening. It won't just sort of dwindle off into chaos. Be like, the reason everything anyway is happening is just to drive people to the spirit. So that's that's the purpose of the whole thing. So before the destruction, there'll be this opportunity, and I had the feeling, because I thought, that Sri Kalki, the way we will want to act, it's not a slow thing like Sri Mataji was incarnated. It'll just be like finishing off.
Very quickly, right?
Yeah, and that we will have to witness that basically. Mataji told one of the doctors in Washi that a time will come when we won't be able to help the people anymore. So I think all these things are a bit freaky because it's like, oh my God, what's going to be like and what's going to happen to us. Like I was just in the hospital recently and what if but I'm noticing now that getting over the fear of death and realizing that it's anyway just a story. And I have to remind myself every day that I'm not the center of the universe. Like we literally take our problems so seriously. Like, oh my gosh, I got some problem. I got to go to the doctor. It's like, so what? You're not the center of the universe. So what if something happens to you? Just, you're supposed to be actually just seeing us like players in this play. And if something happens, then you go, okay, see what's happening to the player. Call Edward and it's easy to say, but in daily life, it's not always.
Yeah, it's always.
I still have a built-in paranoia of basic existence things, like about time. I get freaked out about time. About people, I get freaked out about. I have this sort of paranoia of people, and of course, financial and health, and these basic things. But now I can, rise above and see what's happening. And Mataji gives me little opportunities sometimes to react. Oh my God, that was really bad.
Wow, amazing, Uncle Edward. I think we just have some messages here from Valerie from France saying hello.
Hello.
John Hunter. Olá, pessoal. Hi folks. in Portuguese. And so I think we would like to thank you so much. Thank you, and Auntie Brigitte as well. This wonderful couple, who has given us so much joy, so much creativity, and brought so much beautiful Sri Ganeshas to the altars of so many yogis all over the world. And also I would like to remind that Uncle Edward is Sir Edward, as you also have. You also have. So he wrote many books, children's books. Okie dokie, no?
This was the best one, actually. This is the Ramayana rewritten.
The Ramayana. I think you also made it available in PDF.
Yeah.
I think.
Also, yeah.
Amazing. And also this is the blog. So the link to this blog and to your website, it's also in the description below. So you have, as Uncle Edward mentioned, there are more than 300 articles here. So there's a lot about the beginning of Sahaj Yoga in Canada. So I think it's definitely a must-read for all of us. Just a hello also from Murilo. Hello. And also, I want just to remind everyone that there are also more podcasts like this one. There's Sahaj Times, where you have nice podcasts with two Italian yogis, Lele and Fabrizio. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to listen to Sahaj yogis, to Sahaj stories, and enjoy vibrations. There's also UK Golden Memories. Also, the links of these two podcasts are in the description below. And to remind everyone that also they can get the Virata book. There is a lot of other stories and interviews and conversations like we had here with Uncle Edward. So I don't know if you have a final question, Aida, to Uncle Edward.
Just thank you. It's very inspiring to hear your story. It was not easy. There was full of challenges. So it's very inspirational for us to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. So I have also a message here from Lakshmi Ganga. Thank you, Edward. So I think in the name of all of us listening, thank you so much to bring all this joy. And I mean, to bring all this story. And I mean, it's such a generosity, I would say. Any final words, Uncle Edward?
Yeah, I think the last thing that I always come back to, like 40 years ago, was when I expected all this advice from Sri Mataji when I bowed in front of her, was that she just told me not to feel guilty and that she knew I would make it somehow. I think she knows for each of us that she knows our trajectory, where we're going. And it's supposed to be an entertaining story. You can't do that without tensions. And so we just have to eventually just witness and know that Sri Mataji's. I had a thing when I was, before I went for this operation, I suddenly realized, because my mother was sort of missing in my childhood, that Sri Mataji said that she's with each of us, So I was sitting in our living room here, and I just thought, maybe Sri Mataji is sitting here sometimes, And I thought she could sit here all the time because she can be with each of us all the time. And then I sort of had this image of her knitting or something, They're knitting, and then always hearing us talking. And then I felt so nice and safe. It's like, oh my God, she's always there all the time.
Yeah, so with this picture, we all finished this interview. Thank you so much, Uncle Edward. And hope to see you again here in the podcast.
Very good.
Jai Shri Mataji. Oh, wait. I think I forgot one thing very important. So I think we should finish with some music, actually, from Uncle Edward. I think it's the best, isn't it? It's also, what's the name of this instrument?
It's a handpan.
Handpan.
I recorded that just a couple of days ago.
Okay, so let's finish the podcast with the handpan here. Performance.
Darum darum